Hello again, Treksters! Today's block contains several different episodes featuring the fabulous recurring Trek actor Jonathan Del Arco, a pinch of Worf lamenting choices, and other Trek favorites as we start closing in on the best of Trek. And I'm your host, Dustin Wing. Putting right what once went wrong at 117. The Leap Home. Or Detained. Usually when you get famous pairings from other TV shows together, it's a gimmick to cover up a mediocre to bad episode. Here, bringing in Dean Stockwell as the guest of the week takes a solid Trek premise and dials it up to 11. As the warden of a Tandaran prison, a race that hates the Suliban even more than Archer, to the point they've gone all Japanese internment camp on every Suliban in their space, just in case 1 in 100 of them are part of the Cabal. At first, Jonathan and Mayweather are interred by mistake for doing some exploration in a shuttle pod, but when it's found out that Archer has knowledge about the Suliban, he's forced to prove that he's not actually Sam Beckett. When Enterprise shows up to get them, they end up helping with a prison break. The message about false imprisonment is one of the most perfectly Trek plots in the entirety of Enterprise. And we get the benefit of reuniting Bakula and the late great Dean Stockwell. For me, this is the first truly great episode in Enterprise's run. Splitting its loyalties at 116, impossible choice. Or change of heart. Remember the time when Worf chose to save his wife and let a Federation intelligence asset die, only to have her die a few episodes later? The A-plot is just that straightforward, but giving literal life or death choices to Worf. The guy that's not good at making life-altering choices drives the pain he experiences after Jadzia gets hit by a Jem'Hadar weapon that stops the body's ability to clot a wound, and tries to soldier on through the same few meters of jungle set redressed, through a montage of suffering. The B-plot sees O'Brien and Julian learning the Ferengi game of Tongo, just for the satisfaction of watching Quark lose, only to be beat improbably by what's probably the equivalent of a royal flush. Though, the fun is in getting there, as Julian opens up to Quark about his love for Jadzia, that's been obvious since episode 1 in his over-the-top horn dog days on DS9. And it turns out, he's talking to another admirer of the fair Trill Maiden. And what ensues helps round out the episode's overall message of lost love, with the whole thing being capped off by Sisko telling Worf that he simultaneously made the right and the wrong choice. But don't worry, Worf. You've got a nice cushy ambassador job for a few years before you become a pacifist warrior nun, charting the boundaries of darkness at 115, the Nothing, or the Void. Seven shows off her cooking prowess and intolerance of perception regarding her perfectly paired courses, as Voyager is sucked into a space butthole, but this one is enter only, finding themselves stuck in a bubble of space devoid of any energy or resources except what gets pulled in. Turns out they're in a high-stakes game of Road Warrior to keep their own resources against desperate pirates. As it looks like Voyager might not make it, Janeway turns that frown upside down by uniting many of the other vessels just trying to survive here also into a mini-federation, pooling resources and technology to try and escape. Amidst all this, they come across a race that plagues all the ships, supposedly native to the Void, which doesn't make much sense, in a place devoid of all energy. But putting that aside, we get this subplot where Jonathan Del Arco, as Fantome, learns a language of light and sound from the Doctor and then teaches it to other members of his species. And they help disable the remaining pirates to allow Janeway's coalition of the willing to escape. A couple of things to note in this episode. Chakotay is a vegetarian, but he served Luvian quail at the beginning, which I suppose could go back to the idea that no replicated thing is truly meat if the pre-cooked bird was replicated. Either way, the episode was nominated for an Emmy in makeup with many species represented. All in all, a wonderfully Trek message in this one. Finding out if it can handle the truth at number 114. A few good Klingons. Or Rules of Engagement, one of Trek's many great courtroom dramas, as Worf's in the hot seat for destroying a Klingon ship in the middle of battle that was supposedly filled with civilians. Famous recurring Trek actor Ron Canada takes the role of Klingon prosecutor with an agenda and does a masterful job trying to weave a narrative that Worf is impulsive and will absolutely throw down if provoked. Sisko plays the advocate that can't keep his hothead client under control, and towards the end, he turns the narrative around on the Klingon Empire as a ploy, where no civilians died, but Avery Brooks gets a chance to Avery Brooks just a little. It's one of DS9's great reminders that wars often have huge gray areas, and this time Worf dodged a bullet. For the second time in this block, the episode wraps with Sisko trying to get Worf to accept that this is a learning experience in the red uniform, and command, even during war, isn't all tactical prowess. There's a great bit in there as Quark is telling a story about Morn and Adabo Girl that is a fantastic comic relief out of nowhere. Maybe the best episode to center around Worf across 12 seasons of Trek. Proving you can do more than just crash shuttles at 113, Interactive Clip Show, or Shattered. It only took 7 seasons, but Chakotay finally gets a really well-written episode that surrounds his character, and for once it has nothing to do with fake Native American stuff. So double yay! As starts many Trek conundrums, the ship encounters a random anomaly in space, and it has consequences. It shatters the ship into different time periods, most giving glimpses at a bunch of previous episodes, and with the magic of chronotons injected in a serum from the Doctor, after Chakotay took a surge of energy from the anomaly, this allows him to be the only impervious person to these time fractures. Like any good former Maquis, he takes a hostage to help him out in the form of Captain Janeway before the ship's ever thrown into the Delta Quadrant. Through it all, Chakotay makes the argument that even if this version of Janeway could change the past and avoid the Delta Q altogether, there's something about the journey and the camaraderie over the last 7 years that makes all the Borg attacks, telepathic picture plants, and lost crew members worth it. Kinda goes against the whole getting off Gilligan's Island thing the show's based on, but it's a sound message, and this episode is just generally fun, rehashing old plot threads, while trying to put the ship back into temporal sync. It's both technical and heartwarming. On top of the fact, Chakotay finally gets something meaningful to do. Questioning if truth even exists at 112, Detox, or The Wire. This is the first episode we really find out what Garrick's all about, and simultaneously, nothing at all. The episode opens to Bashir and Garrick trying to get lunch and going over how boring Bashir finds Cardassian War and Peace levels of Soviet propaganda-style novels. That is supposed to have been on par with Shakespeare on Earth. While unsuccessfully getting food, it becomes clear Garrick is in immense pain. But it won't be till he consumes half of Quark's stock of Kanar and passes out that Bashir can even attempt to do anything for him. But it turns out Garrick's problem is both technological from an implant put in his brain by the Obsidian Order, and Garrick's own self-loathing that have both built up to dangerous levels. Through all the half-truths and bald-faced lies Garrick tells Bashir through an intense period of cold turkey drying out, there's really a good real-world moral of how hard substance abuse is to quit. It's easier to just give your brain what you've built it up to ask for, rather than go the hard road that Bashir helps Elam get through, with some eventual help from an Auburn Tain, who's later revealed as Garrick's father. This early episode in the series truly helps cement this ambiguous duo, as friends for the rest of the series. And the ending gives us one of the internet's greatest bases for memeing, questioning whether anything Garrick said in the episode is true. It's all true, especially the lies. Everyone gets a chance to weigh in at number 111. Opinions. Everyone has them. Or I Borg. Picard ends up feeling like a doormat in this one, as he gives orders that everyone seems more comfortable than normal giving their opinion on what to do differently after finding a small Borg craft with only one survivor. Picard's past experience with the Borg suggests they should leave him, but Crusher and her Hippocratic Oath get in the way of that. What happens across the episode is a softening of hardline opinions against the Borg. Geordi goes from hesitant to giving Hugh his name and becoming his biggest advocate. His enthusiasm rubs off on Guinan, whose planet was assimilated by the Borg, who after a visit to the brig completely changes her opinion, to the point of going to forcing it on the captain, after she'd already told him in no uncertain terms that having Hugh aboard is foolish. Picard disregards orders to use the drone as a weapon and gives him real choices as an individual, which are some of Trek's best messages. After Hugh chooses to go back to the Borg, Geordi even accompanies him, and you feel the sense of loss for Geordi as Hugh is transported away. A great moral in the episode about never being too old or too affected by a topic to change your opinion. Discovering what your past really holds at 110. Reawakenings. Or The Impossible Box. Despite its flaws, I do think Season 1 of Picard is its overall best season. This is where the show's slow build finally reaches a point where it reaches out and grabs you. The bulk of the episode surrounds Soji's journey to discover who she really is, after weird dreams of her as a child, and Narek tipping her off to the fact she spends exactly 70 seconds calling her mom every night, before she just kind of deactivates. Turns out, she's only 3 years old, and her memories are made up. The crew of La Sirena are kind of a mess, particularly Agnes, fresh off the whole killing of her former boyfriend thing, and finds dudes playing soccer in the middle of night. Sexy as hell. Raffi's not doing much better as she hits the snake leaf and the bottle at the same time before cashing in favors at the expense of friendships so JL can get onto the artifact. The scene where Picard first beams onto the Borg cube makes where this episode is ranked worthy of its spot alone, as he has flashbacks to his time as Locutus, getting disoriented and almost shuffles off the non-OSHA compliant walkways, before some XBs and a friendly face ground him and keep him upright. Jonathan Del Arco again reprising the role of Hugh, and being willing to help his old friend that caused his own transformation in any way he can. Which leads us back to Soji, who's tricked into a Romulan ceremony to uncover clues to finding her homeworld, and nearly gets irradiated to a shutdown until she activates and realizes some of her artificial potential, to conveniently pop out in front of a complete stranger promising to help if she just follows. I mean, I'd think this is just another Jat Vash plot, but it leads us to a little garden spot Hugh knows, that the Romulans somehow don't know about in the Queen's Chamber, which has a spatial trajector which yeets Picard and Soji to planet Unicorn Rabbit. Oh yeah, and Elnor's there, but not written well as usual, and decides Hugh is now more hopeless of a cause than Picard. And look at how that turns out for him. There was so much to unpack here, and it's just fair to say this episode has something for everyone as far as television watching preferences. It's generally a great mix of action, touching moments, and moving the season story forward.
Ah, computer. That program is available.
Thanks, Major. Major. Thanks, Major. Thanks, Major.
Warning, coolant system breach.
Thanks, Major.
Unable to comply.